What if death isn't the end, but just the beginning of a journey mapped out in stunning detail over 1,000 years ago? Ancient Hindu sages didn't just speculate about the afterlife, they mapped it with a precision that rivals modern science. Forget myths and metaphors. What if ancient Hindu texts contain the most detailed, systematic blueprint of what happens after death? What if death is not a mystery but a well-documented transition, meticulously recorded in sacred texts over a millennium ago? For centuries, the West has debated the afterlife. But deep in the heart of Hindu philosophy lies an after-death roadmap so precise, it will change everything you believe. What if everything you thought you knew about death was just scratching the surface? Deep within ancient Hindu texts lies a blueprint so detailed, so precise about what happens after death, that it would challenge even the most skeptical minds. These aren't vague religious descriptions or metaphorical stories. They're systematic observations made by ancient sages who mapped the territory of death with scientific precision. Over 1,000 years ago, in a small village near modern-day Chidambaram in the south of India, lived a remarkable sage named Thirumula. According to ancient Tamil texts, he wasn't just another spiritual seeker. He was a master of the most profound practices of consciousness exploration. The story goes that Thirumula would enter deep states of meditation. In a cave near the famous Tilai Nataraja temple, local villagers observed something extraordinary. He could remain in this state for months, sometimes years, without food or water. His body showed no signs of decay or deterioration. When he emerged from these states, he would share profound insights about consciousness, death, and the nature of reality. But here's what makes Thirumula's story particularly fascinating. He documented his experiences in extraordinary detail in his masterwork, the Thirumandaram. He describes exactly what happens when consciousness separates from the body, both in meditation and death. He wrote about witnessing multiple layers of existence, mapping out territories of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to acknowledge. What did Thirumula and other ancient sages know that we don't? How did they develop such precise understanding of death and consciousness thousands of years before modern science? The answer lies in their systematic approach to exploring consciousness through deep meditative states called samadhi. These weren't just random spiritual experiences. The sages developed specific techniques to maintain complete awareness while systematically shutting down bodily functions, essentially experiencing a form of conscious death while still being able to return and document their observations. Modern medical science has confirmed that during deep samadhi states, these masters can indeed slow their metabolic processes to near-death levels while maintaining perfect awareness. For thousands of years, the Upanishads, Garuda, Purana, and other sacred texts have held secrets that modern science is only beginning to understand. What's truly remarkable is how these ancient insights are now being validated by contemporary near-death experiences and cutting-edge consciousness research. Today, we're going to dive deep into this ancient wisdom and unlock knowledge that has been preserved for millennia. You'll discover not just what happens in the moments after death, but why this understanding is crucial for every living person. This isn't about beliefs or religion. It's about understanding the most fundamental journey every single one of us will take. In the next 15 minutes, you'll learn exactly what the ancient rishis discovered about the death process, the specific stages our consciousness goes through, and most importantly, how this knowledge can transform the way you live right now. This information isn't just fascinating, it's essential for anyone who wants to approach both life and death with awareness and preparation. Let's begin by exploring the extraordinary methods these ancient sages used to gather this knowledge. The ancient Hindu sages approached death investigation with a rigor that would impress modern scientists. Through advanced meditation techniques and yogic practices, they developed the ability to maintain complete awareness during states that most humans experience only unconsciously. Imagine having a high-definition camera that could record every subtle change in consciousness as it transitions from one state to another. That's essentially what these masters achieved through decades of disciplined practice. They weren't theorizing or philosophizing. They were conducting direct observation of the consciousness phenomenon. According to the Katha Upanishad, these sages identified distinct stages of the death process, each with its own unique characteristics. They discovered that death isn't a sudden event, but a carefully orchestrated process that begins days before clinical death and continues long after the heart stops beating. Modern hospice workers regularly report patterns that align perfectly with these ancient descriptions. For instance, the texts describe how dying individuals begin to perceive non-physical realities about 48 to 72 hours before death. Today's healthcare workers constantly observe patients having conversations with deceased relatives or describing spiritual presences exactly as the ancient texts predicted. One of the most fascinating aspects of this ancient knowledge is its detailed mapping of what they called the subtle body, an energy system that interpenetrates our physical form. The text describes 72,000 nadis, or energy channels that carry life force throughout our being. These aren't just poetic metaphors. The sages provided precise descriptions of their locations, functions, and roles in the death process. When someone begins the death process, these energy channels begin a systematic shutdown. The texts describe how prana life force gradually withdraws from these channels in a specific sequence, first from the feet and legs, then moving upward through the body, eventually concentrating in the heart center. Think about this. How could ancient sages have known about this systematic shutdown pattern thousands of years ago? Modern medical science has only recently documented this same progression of death where the body systems shut down in a predictable sequence from the extremities inward. According to the Garuda Purana, the first 72 hours after death are absolutely critical for the departing consciousness. During this period, the subtle body gradually disconnects from the physical form through a series of precise stages. Each stage has specific characteristics and potential experiences for the consciousness. The texts describe how most people experience a type of review of their entire life during this period. But it's not the chaotic flashback often depicted in movies. Instead, it's a systematic evaluation where each action, thought, and intention is understood in its full context and impact. Modern near-death experiences consistently report this same phenomenon. People who have been clinically dead and then revived often describe experiencing a comprehensive life review that matches these ancient descriptions in remarkable detail. They report seeing not just their actions, but understanding their effects on others in a profound way. One of the most significant revelations from these texts is the description of 3 distinct paths consciousness can take after death. These aren't arbitrary destinations, but rather natural progressions based on one's state of development and awareness. The first path, called Devayana, the path of light, is described as a direct route to higher states of consciousness. This path becomes available to those who have developed significant spiritual awareness during their lifetime and maintain clear consciousness during the death process. The texts describe this as a direct ascent through various states of being, unhindered by attachments or karmic bonds. The second path, Pitrayana, the path of smoke, is more common. This path involves various intermediate states and experiences before the consciousness moves on to its next phase of existence. It's described as being influenced by one's karma and mental patterns. Here, the soul processes remaining karmic patterns and undergoes further spiritual refinement before moving to its next phase. The third path involves immediate rebirth, typically taken by those with strong attachments and unresolved desires. This occurs when strong attachments and unresolved desires pull consciousness quickly back into embodiment. The texts explain that intense worldly desires and unprocessed karma create a natural momentum toward rapid reincarnation. The sages emphasize that these paths aren't predetermined. They become available based on our level of consciousness development and the clarity we maintain during the death process. The texts provide detailed descriptions of how consciousness navigates each of these paths and what determines which path becomes available. The texts describe an incredible process they call consciousness transfer, which occurs at the moment of death. According to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, our essential consciousness, known as Atman, moves through a precise sequence of dissolution. Imagine your consciousness as a drop of water being carefully extracted from one container to be transferred to another. The texts explain that this process requires specific conditions and follows exact laws, just as water follows certain physical laws. When moving between containers, consciousness follows specific principles. During this transition, the sages identified 5 major stages of this transfer. First, our sensory awareness dissolves. Sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell gradually fade in a specific sequence. Next, our mental faculties begin to withdraw. Memory, reasoning, and decision-making abilities undergo a systematic shutdown. Then, our emotional body begins to dissolve, followed by our vital energy systems. And finally, our core awareness enters a state of profound transition. What's remarkable is how these descriptions align with what modern neuroscience has discovered about the shutdown sequence of brain functions during death. The ancient sages somehow knew this was. Thanks for watching.